Well, hello folks, and welcome to the first build video of my 2020 Ram Promaster that is featured in our We Bought a Van video. Anyway, in anticipation of the delivery of our van, which should have been 3 months, but turned into 6 because of COVID, I spent that time buying stuff off of Amazon and collecting all the parts that I figured I would need, the solar, electrical, ceiling fans, specialty tools that might be otherwise hard to access when you needed them. So anyway, I loaded up all the materials, including a floor for the van, because I didn't want to have to go and collect material once I've arrived at site. And I drove from Ontario to Alberta to my brother's garage. So anyway, let's cue the B-roll. Okay, so as you can see, it's good to have a little brother because he sure has a beautiful workshop here. The last time I had been in it, the doors weren't on and the floor wasn't poured, so from my perspective things had really changed, and any pictures I'd seen ahead of getting there surely didn't do it justice. Not only did he have an incredible space, he had all the tools that anybody could ever possibly want, need, or use. So anyway, after we installed the C.R. Lawrence window, which I'd had delivered to his area on the floor. And it's basically 1 inch of styrofoam with no bracing underneath it, and is glued to the floor with the edges glued at the entrance points and bolted to the floor. So anyway, on top of that, we have put 5/8 pressure treated plywood. Now a mock-up was done with the water tank and fridge to get a feel for the layout and visualize things that may not have been apparent in your initial sketches, because once you stand there with everything in place, it just has a different feel. The aluminum angle was laid to establish the hall area, and that would later be used to support and stabilize the 52-gallon water tank that you see. Now, one area of concern was the structural framing that was next to this C.R. Lawrence window that we installed. It's very tight. There's limited room between the edge of the window and the frame, and it was decided to go tight to the window frame, which required lots of scribing. Now, I used a paint stick with holes drilled in it, and the scribing material was held on a drywall square that was pinched in 2x4, so it would stand on its own, and you could do whatever you had to, and you didn't have to hang on to it. And this was important because this was a floor-to-ceiling scribe. Now, as you can see, at this point, the first 2 pieces of the cabinet had been placed to hold the fridge next to the bed, and that resulted in the remaining space between there and that window frame to be used as an upper closet, and on the lower level an area for the diesel parking heater. Now this wall could not be installed permanently, and this was an issue throughout the build, was stuff was being made and taken out and not used until a later date. And in this case, this wall had to be removable because we had to have access to that space to be able to work in there. And so I was kind of doing all the work around that final component until we had that furnace in. And another consideration was that before this could be put in, I had to figure out what the couch or the cabinet area was going to look like, because I had to make an access panel from inside the cabinet to the bottom of this board that I was scribing to be able to access this furnace for a future repair or observations or whatever would be required. So it was kind of future proofing it and trying not to paint myself into a corner while I was doing all these things. Hey guys, well, I hope you found that informative. There's a few things I'd like to go over just to give you an idea of how it was finally finished, this floor. As you can see, I put in the styrofoam, and then there was pressure treated plywood that went on top of it. I didn't put any framing underneath it because I didn't feel that it was required. The reality is that when you're in these vans, there's only a 4x8 footprint that you're actually coming in contact with. Everything else is underneath the surrounding cabinetry or whatever. And so I didn't want to have any joints in the walking areas that might deflect or whatever. And so in this situation, I put the styrofoam from side to side and the plywood from the front to the back. So when you look at it in that aspect, if I go to this couch area and measure out, it's 47.5 inches to the outside here. Now, I've got a 2-inch board, so when I start the plywood 2 inches in, what it does is it buries that far edge underneath the cabinetry. So it's secured by that unit, and from the front to the back to the edge of the bed, it's 7 feet, so there's a foot sticking in or beyond that part, so there's no floating joints in the actual living area. If you look at the door here, if that's the 4x8 sheet of plywood, what also happens is it goes back far enough on these Promasters that the wheel well, where it intersects with the plywood, you're only ever having to cut 1 notch out of each piece of plywood, because there's a 4x8 sheet and then a 2x8 on the far wall. And so on this back corner, all I would have to do is just notch it out to accommodate the wheel well, and on the subsequent 2-foot section by 8 feet also. And so you're not having to make that one jigsaw puzzle piece that has to fit both sides at the same time. So it just makes it a little easier to make a cardboard template or whatever, and get a nicer finished fit. So it turned out handy in that regard. Then what happens at the back is that you have the 8-foot piece, the 2-foot piece, the wheel wells cut in like this into the 2 corners, and then the other piece is a solid piece across the back, across the 6-foot. I forget what the measurement is, and it might be a little different on your build, whatever you're doing, but it went in very well, and it was I think I've got in excess of 24 bolts holding it to the floor, and it seems to have worked out very well so far. And by putting the wood on here, it allows you to finish it and give you a very positive nailing or screwing surface to secure the floor. So when the floor was put in, all the drilling was done from underneath, because if you do it from the top, you don't know where it is lining up in the ribbing on the floor. And what you want is a point that is the highest point, so that when you cinch those bolts in and draw the carriage bolts into the plywood, because they have to sit flat to accommodate the finished floor, then what it allows you to do is drill it from underneath, put the carriage bolts in. We used lock nuts, nylon lock nuts with a washer, and the putty that you see, it's an electrical putty that they use, I guess, for pipes that go through external buildings and that, so it kind of stays flexible. And when it is screwed in from underneath and drawn down, it forces that putty into the hole. At a later date, we cut those bolts off and rock guarded them. So they're totally encapsulated in the rock guard. And from the top, where the bolt was pulled down, I used very good adhesive, and all I did was I used the leftover tubes of that stuff and just filled in that hole, because when it dried, it was so hard that I had to actually use a flap grinder to level the floor. So I have no concerns about that ever chipping out or creating a problem underneath. So kind of have to go with your gut feeling, and don't be afraid to do a little extra work. This is like building a house. This part of it, if you don't have a good foundation, you know, it can go south on you. Let's go and have a look at the second component of that video, which is the wall that is tucked into the window, and I'll show you how that turned out and if I had any issues with it. So anyway, let's go inside and we'll have a look at that. Okay, so this is the wall that I showed scribing. As you can see, it follows the edge of this window. Now, I really had no choice but to do this in this build, because if I had gone further away from this into that steel beam that you see that is a structural member of the van, I would have still had to build it out at some level to try and finish off this area. So what I chose to do was just to use this wall as a finishing point for the wall and the edge of the window. So that's what I've chosen to do, and it seems to have worked out. It was labor intensive. As you can see, I still got some touch-up painting to do and things of that nature. But anyway, that's how it turned out. It did turn out well. I'm quite happy with it, although it's kind of deceiving because on this side it just looks like a wall, but on the inside I did have points that were, I guess you could call them friction points or whatever, that I had to nibble away at different angles to accommodate the different types of you know, bumps and whatever the heck was in this thing. So as you can see down here, this was a place where it just stood out and I couldn't do anything with it. And my final solution is, there you go. Hey, that's van life, baby. So anyway, I hope this helps you guys and gals, you know, make decisions on your build and kind of anticipate what, you know, is involved. But it is a process, and if there's any way that I can add commentary to help you in your project, well, reach out, and if I'm able, I will try to tell you how maybe I would do things differently. And there are a number of things that will come up later. But anyway, you guys take care, and we'll look forward to your comments and any insights that you have, and we'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.